So first thing you want to do is on your way up to the job, you want to make sure that you bring your narrow and wide templates along with some knee protection. And then, find out which walkthrough template you need, whether it be the wide or the narrow. Place the template on the tub and determine how far you can go from the left to the right. Show the customer that, and then let them make the decision on where exactly they want the actual walkthrough. Once determined, go ahead and trace the walkthrough, and then you can actually carry those back out to your truck, and then you'll know exactly which walkthrough you will need, whether it's the wide or the narrow. So on this particular tub, it is a stamped steel tub. There's several different types of tubs, but on this one we're going to show you how to trace it and then also protect the actual cutout from destroying the porcelain. So later on we'll also show you how to cut a cast iron tub. So now we're going to take some 1.5-inch tape and place over the actual trace, and you will be able to see the markings through the center of the tape, just to ensure that it's in the center of the tape. Okay, once you've got the tape all on there, place your template back over the top of that to retrace the line so that you can see it. Like I said, you will be able to see the line through the tape. Just make sure that it's lined up correctly. Okay, so make sure you have plenty of blades lined up. A stamped steel tub will take several blades to cut. On a fiberglass tub you could actually probably cut 3 or 4 of them out with one blade. Stamped steel, you could use 3 or 4 blades in one particular cut. So make sure you're ready, and I would definitely recommend some heavy-duty latex gloves, or any type of glove that's going to protect you from getting burnt while changing the blades. So when you're placing the jigsaw up on an angle like that, you need it to make sure that the base makes contact with the actual tub. This is very important so that the jigsaw doesn't jump up at you. And basically all you need to do is make a starting hole, so that you can get your blade inside there. And then once that's in there, just go ahead and start cutting. Now on stamped steel tubs, the majority of them have a separate skirt that is pinched together in the face there, as you can see. Now of course this is going to create a bit of a challenge to cut through, so just be patient. Make sure that you apply plenty of pressure on the actual jigsaw to cut through that pinch. Now once you get through that, the rest of it goes fairly easy, as long as you have a fresh blade on there. Well, when you get to the bottom of the cut there on that particular side, you need to back up just a bit, about 1 inch or so, and then go ahead and just make a turn, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to get the blade in there for that particular angle. Now don't worry about turning the jigsaw around and cutting out that little triangle. You'll be able to do that once the walkthrough is completely cut out. Notice how the blade changes color, and also, you know, the teeth that are missing. That's what you want to keep an eye out for. Once they start losing teeth, you're obviously going to start losing your cutting ability. When you're cutting the inside of the tub, this can definitely be tricky. So make sure that you you know, just hold on tight and apply plenty of pressure, and just be patient with the tool. Do the work. Not, you know, work smart, not hard. And there it is. Okay, now remember in the beginning when we made those round cuts coming around those edges there, you can easily go back and clean those up with your jigsaw. You know, notice here you don't have to, because you actually came from the top side. Keep in mind, whenever you're cutting these tubs, you don't always want to focus on being right on the line. You can always go back and actually shave down extra material if necessary. Then go ahead and remove the masking tape, which was protecting you, you know, from chipping out the porcelain too far. On these stamped steel tubs, they do tend to vibrate quite a bit, what can cause a little bit of porcelain destruction there. So just be careful. Once you get the tub all cut out there, you want to make sure that you've got all your marker lines wiped up there, and you know, this would also be a good time to go ahead and vacuum and clean up your mess around from all the cutting there. Especially on a cast iron or stamped steel tub, you want to make sure the area is really clean so that you're not creating a mess on your actual walkthrough. Take a good look here at the actual where the tub's pinched up. You can see there that where it creates a little bit of difficulty. Okay, moving along to the templating part of your cutout. This is, you know, it's the best idea to get some poster board or just some leftover cardboard, something with a little bit of structure to it. You don't want to have something too thin like just regular paper. You want to be able to hold that without it flexing, because if it flexes on the inside of the tub there, it can actually create you know, a larger image than what's actually there. So once you've got that, I mark them with a left O and a right O, which stands for left outside, so that you know that that side of the actual template is facing outward, and you know, and then the other will just be blank. So just trace both sides. A lot of times, some guys I've heard, you only use one piece for both sides. I would never do that. I would always template both sides, just because of the contour of the tub could be different. So, like I said, mark those left O and right O, and then you're ready to cut them out. So basically, this step can be done in one of two ways. You can use a pair of scissors, as I am here, or you can use a razor blade. A razor blade can be a little chaotic and a little dangerous. I recommend a good pair of scissors for this step. Now notice what I'm doing here. This tub has that step in it right there. I'm tracing a little round in it to make it a little easier for that actual walkthrough to slip over that step there. So sometimes you have to get a little creative. Okay, once you get them both cut out and you're sure which side's which, double check them, put them back up on there, because you never know, a lot of times it does flex when you're holding it on there. And if necessary, you need to make some extra markings, you can do so at that time. You know, try to be exact. This part's going to pay off, and the more time you spend here, the less time you're going to spend, you know, on your actual cutout or the walkthrough. Or, you know, if you make these too big, you can actually end up having to have a large gap in between your walkthrough and tub. So just be exact. Okay, once you get your walkthrough unwrapped, make sure that the tapered end is always facing inward. This is very important because especially if they're planning on using a quick tub, quick door for the actual walkthrough, it's only going to work one way. So taking the left side of the walkthrough and placing the left template there. I eyeball this part because I've done it for so long that I can tell that, you know, a 1/4 inch is a 1/4 inch, but you always want it about a 1/4 inch from the top of the walkthrough. It doesn't have to be exact, but, you know, after the first one you cut out, you'll realize it's about a 1/4 inch thick, and that's about how, you know, far you want it from that. You know, you can even go a little bit thicker if you like.
Just pulled that mold down to make sure the lines come all the way to the bottom. That piece of
Once you get that traced, just drag it down a bit to continue the lines to the bottom of the walkthrough. A lot of tubs will have that contour that goes inward. This one's pretty vertical, but a lot of them kind of curve inward, so you want to keep an eye on that, and sometimes you even have to eyeball it and get a little creative. So now marking the right side. And you always want to keep that towards the center of the walkthrough, unless, you know, you have to do something else because of the shape of the tub, which I have before. And a lot of times, if you'll have a template that's very narrow on one side and wide on the other. Sometimes it's better to keep it closer to the outer edge. Now, when you get to this point, you want to roll them over so that you can actually physically see them from the bottom of the walkthrough when you lay it down, just like so. This way you can use a straight edge to connect the lines. Now what I'm doing here is I take one of the templates and I mark right around the center of the tub, the center of the cutout, to check and see how close my lines are. And a lot of times I'll even eyeball a little further down the tub because the walkthrough itself will actually come down a few inches from the actual cut line. So you want to make sure that that they're semi-close. Or you can use a tape measure, whatever you like.
So you got to keep in mind, the tub is sloping out.
And making sure there isn't any curvature, and if it does, like I said, sometimes you have to eyeball it. You know, if you're not sure, always cut on the inside of your line. Give yourself a little bit of play. Sometimes it's better to have to cut it out 2 or 3 times rather than replace the actual walkthrough. So get your good straight edge, put it on there, lay it out. In this particular tub, it's pretty straight arrow all the way across. Pretty easy deal here. And once you've got that marked, you're ready to start cutting. Now, what I do in this next step here is when I'm cutting this walkthrough, I always try to aim my jigsaw towards the inner part of the tub. And notice how that I'm actually aiming towards the inside of the cut. And you turn the walkthrough rather than the jigsaw. This prevents a huge mess and pretty much keeps all your little chips inside or towards the inner side of the tub. Make sure you have a firm grasp on that walkthrough and the jigsaw base is flush on the actual walkthrough. Notice how I'm barely cutting on the inside of that line. Take your time with this step. One little slip could cost you a walkthrough. So just be patient. Now if you need to, you can go back and shave, any undercut, or square up any of your lines or anything with that jigsaw blade. Works really well. I'll give you a tip. This piece that you cut out of the walkthrough is a bit awkward. This time I always take the time just to cut it up into a few pieces just so that it goes into the garbage easier. You want to make sure that you get all those little fuzzies and little acrylic chips cleaned up, get them off of there. They can get in the way later on in the caulking, so just make sure that you run your hand off on the inside of that cut edge and make sure that they're completely cleaned up. Notice how I'm putting everything in the tub. It's a lot easier to clean out of the tub than it is out of the floor off the bathroom. So. Go ahead and put it in there for a dry fit. And what I do is I like to run my fingers along that edge to feel if you have any gaps or any imperfections in your cut. In this particular case, it's perfect. So go ahead and clean up the mess at this point. You're going to want to get everything cleaned up and vacuumed so that you're ready for your next step. You also want to take some denatured alcohol, or depending on what type of marker you're using, you want to use somewhat of a solvent to get that marker off before you do any caulking on the actual walkthrough piece and the tub itself. This way it doesn't get into the gluees and smear everywhere and create a headache for yourself. Okay, for this next step, what we're going to do is I take a 2x4 and cut it up in a variety of anywhere from 3 to 4 inches. I just kind of eyeball it, and I do this before I go to the job so that I'm not having to cut them in the house, and I just have a good variety of all different sizes there. And if you actually take an entire 2x4 and cut it all the way down in those pieces and leaving the last piece the length of the walkthrough, that'll be good. Notice what I'm doing here now. I'm checking different ways that it'll stack up to meet the bottom of the walkthrough. Get creative. You can turn them on their sides, stand them up. You can also measure and pre-cut them or cut them in the home. I prefer not to, just because it creates more mess. And 2x4s aren't always the easiest thing to cut with a jigsaw. So once you get them in there stacked, press firmly, making sure that they do meet the bottom, and that your lines haven't raised. If you get a large gap on the top edge of the tub, you know that it's pushing up too high, and if you can feel give, you know that you don't have quite enough. So one other thing you can do is you can get you some shim board or just random pieces of plywood, anything you can find to meet the bottom of that walkthrough. So once you get them in there and it's firm and solid, remove the blocks of wood in the order that you stacked them, in the same way to the inside of the tub, so that you remember how they went in and how they're going to go back in. And then what I do is take the glue ease itself, and this is where I'm trimming my tube for the caulking line. You want about a 1/4 inch bead. So some people use a silicone to place these pieces of wood in place. I like to just use the glue ease. The shelf life isn't very long once you've opened it, so you're never going to use an entire tube on actually caulking the walkthrough. So this is a great option right here. It's just to use this to stick the supports in there. Make sure you have paper towel handy. Give yourself a test squeeze. And when you're applying this stuff to your actual wood pieces here, you only need a little bit. You don't have to get too excited with this stuff. Just need a little bit to hold it in place. A little bit goes a long way. When you get to your final piece, you want to put a squiggly line of the glue ease all the way across that, so it really gives good adhesion all the way across, and that in case it does break loose, it's not really going to slip anywhere. Once you get them all in there, place the walkthrough back in, and make sure that you press firmly, ensuring that you're squeezing that glue ease through all the pieces of wood and it's making a connection. Run your fingers along, check your gaps, ensure everything feels good, and you're good to go.
This is we chose this tub as a hard tub because it has a cap on it, and that's how.
Alright, when caulking, you want to just take your time, try to keep it smooth. At this point, I remove my gloves. I like to feel the caulking with my bare hands, and then it also comes out a lot smoother that way. Try to keep a good, even, consistent bead through and through, and only caulk one line at a time. I wouldn't try to caulk around the entire walkthrough. This stuff does set up fast, so you want to just caulk a little bit and then rub it in.
There we go. Oh boy, that's got that big hole in it.
I like to wet my finger a little bit so that the glue ease doesn't stick to my finger as badly, and it also allows it to smooth it out. Anytime you get excessive buildup on your finger there, make sure that you wipe it off so you're not creating a mess. It can be pretty tricky caulking along the inside part of the bottom edge of the tub.
That you'll just have to explain to them.
Oh yeah, I know.
Once you're finished, I use a little mirror to inspect the inside lower edge there to make sure that that the caulking is consistent and it's sealed completely. Okay, this is not an actual cast iron tub. We're just going to pretend that it is, and I'm going to show you how to prepare to do a cast iron walkthrough. Now what I have here is a roll of 72-inch auto mask, a roll of inch and 1.5 tape, and a razor blade. Now you want to start on the right side always, and notice how I am making slack on the edges, the top edge of this tub. You'll see the reasoning behind this in just a minute here. This particular step is going to eliminate a huge mess that the cast and porcelain dust can create. Cast dust with moisture or water or anything in the bathroom can create rust stains, which can be very difficult to remove. Notice how when I turn to go back up that I'm making slack. I'm just carefully pulling out slack with that auto mask and laying the tape over itself. Right back down to the floor there. Now you want to trim it off with a razor blade. In this next step, I'm going to take some tape and I'm going to roll it up backwards so that the sticky side is up. You're going to make 2 of these to stick in the back corners of the tub. They don't necessarily have to be in the back corners, but you want them. You want to keep in mind that your arm is going to be in there with the jigsaw and the other cutting tools. So you want to make sure that this is going to hold the plastic away far enough for you to do what you have to do in there. So carefully stretch that out. You wanna pretty much try to extend all the plastic before you stick it down. And just carefully kind of pull it, wad it up and pull it tight, and then stretch it to those back corners there. That creates plenty of room for you to work inside the tub there. And just take a few pieces of tape. Start in the center, stretch it all the way up, and place it on the back wall there, as high as you can possibly go. Usually ends up being about, I'd say about 5 feet off the ground. And just kind of go from side to side there, taping it up, making sure that it's pretty tight. You want to make sure that you tape in each corner. So basically it goes all the way around the tile or walls or whatever you have. Now this next part can be a little tricky. You want to take that auto mask and run it across the back wall on the actual plastic. You don't want to go above it. You want to stay right on the plastic. Go all the way across. And then about, I would say, 4 to 5 inches onto the side walls. You don't want to go just right up to the wall, actually go past it a little bit. And then you want to extend the plastic, pull it all out before you do any taping. Make sure it's fully extended. And then kind of go back, get you some tape, go back and pull it tight to right there to the edge of the tile or the wall. What this is doing is it's creating a bit of a roof over your head, and then the rest of the plastic's going to drape down behind you. Once you get your corners tacked up there, you're going to want to completely tape off that entire seam there so that nothing blows through there. And this cast dust is notorious for getting anywhere and anything. A lot of times I'll tape up the seam on either the left or the right side to sort of help ensuring that tent doesn't get carried away there. Usually leaving one corner open so that you can get in and out of easy. See how well that works? You can pull it down and begin your cutout. Once you're finished with your actual cutout, you come out of there and you want to grab it right from the corner, pull it down, wad it up towards the inside of the tub, all corners, wad it up on the inside, and you can take it all out and throw it in the garbage. On a cast iron tub, you want to suit up. I use an old chute suit. You can pretty much use anything you want. A good chute suit's probably the best thing that I've come across to use. Really keeps the cast dust from getting to your skin, which cutting one of these tubs out can create a lot of sweat and whatnot. Which combine sweat with cast dust equals rust. A very difficult thing to get off yourself. So make sure you suit up really well. You want to get a good pair of earplugs, safety glasses, ear gloves, and then also a dust mask. Cutting the tub, you want to, on a cast iron tub, you're going to need to make a start hole for your jigsaw in each line that you cut. So I always like to start on the top edge of the tub. You want to go really slow there with your grinder. It can start going all over the place. You do have a little bit of leeway with the walkthrough covering it, but be very careful. This can be very difficult. The porcelain can be anywhere from an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch thick. So just carefully grind through that. Like I said, you're going to have to make a start hole. One trick that I can tell you when you're cutting these, you always want to leave a little piece behind in the beginning, so when you make your cut hole, like on the bottom edge for example, and 1 inch from your other cut line, so that it sort of holds itself together in the corners as you're cutting it out. Now once you grind through the porcelain, you want to try to take out about, I would say, anywhere from 40 to 60% of that cast iron with the actual grinder before you use the jigsaw there. Reason being, and I get this all the time, well, how come you don't cut the whole entire tub out with the actual grinder? Well, the grinder gets hot in itself, and it can also bind up. Once that blade gets in that cut line there, it can bind up and grab, and then just it really is hard on this actual machine. So, but I found the more you cut out with the grinder, the less you have to cut out with the jigsaw, and the easier it is. So try to make your cut line there a little bit wide too. You can kind of turn your grinder there and clean it up and clear out a little bit of a valley there in preparation for your jigsaw. Be patient. This definitely takes some time cutting this out. And I think the more time you spend with the grinder, the less time you'll have to spend with the jigsaw. I don't know if you can see the start hole. I mentioned earlier about making your hole an inch or so away from that particular, from your last cut. Yeah. And whenever I start these, I always get through the porcelain first before you start going through and trying to make your holes or trying to cut deeper through the cast. And get through the porcelain, it cuts fairly easy, and it also gives you a little bit bigger of a guideline to go by. And then, at that point, you can kind of go back through and make it deeper. Now here you can see this is where I'm trying to make my hole. I'm not going to make that hole reach that other cut line. I'm going to leave just a little bit of a tack there to hold that. Another reason for doing that, when you get towards the end of these cast iron cutouts, a lot of times with the jigsaw it'll tend to vibrate, and that piece could actually break inside the tub there, and you don't want that to happen. So once you get cut all the way around, I'm not going to cut this one all the way out. I just wanted to give you guys a really good idea what it's like cutting a cast iron tub. We're only going to cut a small part of this. But once you get that ground out, and just pretend that it's ground all the way around, you're going to start with your jigsaw. And notice how easy it cuts. I've taken out quite a bit of that cast iron, and this particular tub is actually one of those tubs that just has the brutal cast iron. Very difficult to cut. And notice how my jigsaw is just pretty much walking right through it. Notice how I'm cutting away from that cut, which is going to leave that tack I had mentioned earlier. At this point, we're going to pretend that I've already cut the entire tub, and we're going to go back through to take out that tack. So at this point, the actual piece would be eligible to come out. The latches on the quick door are always on the outside. There's only one seal on the inner edge of that quick door, and it's the opposite of the actual handle. Now what I'm showing you here is the adjustment screws. There's only one way to adjust it, and that's the one seal that I'm telling you about. Notice how they're on the opposite sides. That's pretty much it. It's pretty easy to adjust. You should never have to adjust them, but in some cases you may.